Welcome into Hittin Hard with Jon Chuckery here on Locked On Sports Atlanta. Today on the show, is Trae a coach killer? A ridiculous trade scenario for Lamar Jackson. And this is one guy I would trade for. It's all next. Hittin Hard with Jon Chuckery, Locked On Sports Atlanta.
This is Hittin Hard with Jon Chuckery, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta. And it starts now.
Hittin Hard is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/Locked On today to get started. We ask you to head to YouTube.com, put Locked On Sports Atlanta into your search browser. When you get there, hit that subscribe button, growing our community to 6,000 subscribers. Be a part of it. Leave us a comment. We are free and available to download on all of your favorite podcast platforms, including Spotify, Odyssey, wherever you get your podcast from, we can be downloaded there. Of course, Roku and Amazon Fire. Yes, we are available on those platforms as well. And of course, follow me at JMCH316 on my personal Twitter page. So is Trae a coach killer? So now consider the source here. Okay. When I say all of this, consider this source. So there's an article up on Deadspin, okay? Not exactly your leading media source and things like that, but they asked the question about, is Trae a coach killer? And they reference about where does Atlanta go from here? Now, they reference the fact that, Trae is supposed to be this three-point shooter. Does he make his teammates better and all these kinds of things? And I was looking at a couple of stats, for a guy who his, big asset is being a three-point shooter. Trey Young is 32nd in three-point attempts, but he is, ready for this? He is 143rd in the NBA in three-point percentage. 143 in the 143rd in the NBA in three-point percentage this year. And he's a career 35% shooter. He's having an off year, certainly by and large. Now, look, is Trae a coach killer? I don't know that is necessarily the case. And, he certainly had it in for Lloyd Pierce, and that relationship was not going to work. But I will definitely say this, okay? If Nate McMillan decides to retire at the end of the season, and I do think that Nate is going to be gone after next year, that he'll coach out the season and then he'll be gone from the franchise. If that's the case, then Trey Young will be on his third coach in 6 years. Third coach in 6 years. Now, that may not be a coach killer because I don't think Lloyd Pierce was the right guy for the job. And I always said this about Lloyd Pierce. And I said this on the radio when he was first hired. Lloyd Pierce was never going to be here when they got good. Okay? Like Lloyd Pierce was sort of a stopgap coach to get things on track and to get the franchise maybe turned in the right direction and things like that. But Lloyd Pierce was never going to be here when they got good. So while I understand that Trae and Lloyd had their angst and things like that, nobody was on the side of Lloyd Pierce. When you looked at the locker room, nobody was on Lloyd Pierce's side, and it was a fait accompli. The other thing, though, too, is, Nate McMillan was on that staff. So there was a natural progression or a natural replacement for Lloyd Pierce in having Nate McMillan, be the head coach of this team. And of course, led them to the Eastern Conference Finals. And we know the story and things like that. But it still doesn't belie the fact that you potentially are going to be on your third coach in 6 years with Trey Young. And we know it's a players' league, right? I mean, we know all, the superstar players have all of the power and things like that. When I look at the Atlanta Hawks, where do I point the finger, place the blame on? I think there's blame to be had with Nate McMillan. I think there's also blame to be had with Trae Young. I think there's also blame to be had that not enough of these guys can stay healthy over the course of a season. And not just missing a game here or there, but when Clint Capella is, going to be 58 games played, and some of your other guys, Collins or Hunter, are going to be in the mid 60s. That's just not a good sign. Like you can't have that. So there's a lot of blame to be placed around all of this. Do I think Nate McMillan is the biggest part of the blame for all of this? I don't really think so. I think there's a real equal distribution between just some of the lack of chemistry, some of, Trae Young's immaturity and different things like that. But at the same time, something has to give. And I know it's easy to, say that, well, Nate McMillan, it's the easiest thing to do, right? Just to fire your head coach and beyond things like, beyond. Certainly we are going to watch what Nate and the Hawks and Trae and everybody can do to make a run at this thing. Again, I've always asked, does that pendulum swing toward Eastern Conference Finals, or does it swing toward we're barely in the play-ins and things like that? And coming off of 2 losses, and look, these kinds of things are always going to pop up when you have a franchise that should be better than what it is, has been struggling of late, back-to-back losses against, truthfully, probably some inferior opponents when you look at the quality of opponent and the fact that, Chicago had several guys out. You feel like that those are inferior opponents, and the Hawks didn't take advantage of those things, coming off of a 5-game win streak where they played really well. But again, isn't it funny, though? I talked about this last week. When you have this winning streak, when you have this 5-game winning streak, we don't hear bupkis about internal issues, issues with the head coach and the star player. We're not distributing the basketball as much. It's funny how winning just calms and cures a lot of these different things. And then when the franchise is back to 500 and it's a couple of games in a row that you've lost and it's looked at as inferior opponents and things like that, then all of a sudden these things start to pop back up. So I understand the premise of the article. If Nate McMillan was about to be fired, then I'd probably have a different tone. If Nate McMillan is going to coach out the season and make a run at this thing and then evaluate at the end of the year, I don't know that I would label Trae Young a coach killer yet. But certainly it's not a good sign if your star player that you've hitched your wagon to, they're going to have their 3rd coach in 6 years. And I really do believe that at the end of the day, unless they win the NBA championship, unless they make a run and win the NBA title, and that, doesn't look that it's any sort of possibility for, this Hawks team, but unless they make a run to win the NBA title, I don't think there's any scenario where Nate McMillan is going to be back next year. And now you start to get into, okay, well, is it Kenny Atkinson or whatever like that? Well, okay, with all due respect, it has to be a guy that, frankly, Trae Young can bond with and buys into. Because if Trae Young doesn't buy into whatever system is going to come from the next coach, it's all moot. It's all for naught. So this is a difficult situation to navigate through these waters in, because you have your star player, you have look, we just saw it Saturday night, right? You had angst with the head coach and Trae, and we were right back into that scenario when they're not winning and things like that. If the Hawks can find a way to win, a lot of this calms itself down. But I will tell you that unlike Lloyd Pierce, more of the locker room is behind Nate McMillan. I can tell you that everybody isn't, everybody was against Lloyd Pierce. Like the uniform, the locker room was unified in the fact that they were against Lloyd Pierce. It's not that way right now. And there are a lot of people that are on Nate McMillan's side in this whole thing. It's an interesting dynamic. We'll see how this thing plays out, but certainly it's not a good situation, whether it's off the court, on the court, whatever like that. Get back to winning basketball. They play Oklahoma City tonight. Get back on a winning streak, and a lot of these things start to naturally go away. I want to talk about my friends over at FanDuel. Listen, the NFL playoffs are here, and we're excited because this is our new sports betting partner for Locked On. They're the #1 sports book in America, and it's FanDuel. Listen, if you're new to FanDuel, we've got a great offer for you, and you can get involved in the action, making it fun, easy, everything that you can ask for. So new customers, when you join today, are going to get $150 in free bets guaranteed. Simply place your first $5 bet at FanDuel.com, and you'll get $150 off if you're a new customer that signs up at FanDuel.com/LockedOn. 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 It has all of your favorite ways to bet: money line, point spreads, player props, and you can even combine your bets for a chance to win a bigger payout with the same game parlay. So look, it's really simple. You take the mobile device, right? Got the mobile device. You plug in FanDuel.com/LockedOn, and you sign up today. And with your first $5 bet, you're going to get $150 in free bets, win or lose, at FanDuel.com/LockedOn. Now, we hope you win. We hope you take all the information to be a smarter sports bettor, but we hope that you win. But you're going to get $150 each way in free bets when you place that first $5 bet at FanDuel.com/LockedOn. FanDuel, make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports book of the NFL. And of course, besides making Hittin Hard with Jon Chuckery your first listen every day, make Locked On Sports today your second listen. Check out Locked On Sports, biggest stories of the day, instant reactions, big game recaps, and the take of the day, available on Odyssey, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts from. So we've certainly talked about the Lamar Jackson and is he available? Is he not available? And I don't think that at the end of the day that he's going to be available for the Atlanta Falcons. And, I'm not in the camp of giving up assets and money and different things like that for Lamar Jackson out there. But let me give you this trade scenario. And this is where it gets to be ridiculous. So this comes from the Washington Post, okay? Certainly one of the respected newspapers. I don't know how good their sports coverage is, but anyway. So they write in their article that, quote, the executives I spoke with keep coming back to two NFC South teams as potential Jackson landing spots: the Atlanta Falcons and the Carolina Panthers. Both missed out on Deshaun Watson a year ago, but not without a significant fight. Both have a needed quarterback. Both markets could use a jolt, and neither owner is afraid to spend. Now, here's what they also say, that the Washington Post says that Carolina should send star cornerback J.C. Horn, 2 first-round picks, and a future second-round pick. And then they go on to say that the Falcons deal may be even more expensive. Quote, Atlanta, never more of a pro football town than when Mike Vick was running its offense, okay, could offer, listen to this, rising star cornerback A.J. Terrell, the number 8 pick, future picks in 2023, and maybe even aging defensive tackle Grady Jarrett, who would add bona fide chops to the interior of Baltimore's defensive line, especially if Calais Campbell retires. So let me see if I got this right. I have a number 1 corner. I have my best defensive lineman, the number 8 pick, and other future draft picks in this thing. Okay. Can I say no to that trade scenario? Why would the Falcons, for a guy who doesn't put them in the Super Bowl, gut their entire roster? Because at that point, if you're trading Terrell, Grady, the 8th pick, and more picks besides that, where do you think you're going to be as a franchise? Like, how do you get rid of really good players, bring in one guy, and it makes all the difference? And look, I say it all the time. Quarterback can influence the game more than any player on the football field. But as bad as this roster is, if you take Grady and Terrell and the number 8 pick, whoever that player is, whatever the name is on the back of the jersey, you start to take all of that away. How are you any better with Lamar? Yeah, it's exciting that, he's going to run around and things like that. Great. I saw that with Mike Vick. And you know what happened? They still never had 2 winning seasons back-to-back year. They still never had consecutive seasons of winning record. Yeah, there were moments, right? The Minnesota game in overtime when he had the big run, Carolina when he came back, and he did make an NFC championship game. But those things were few and far between. So for the life of me, why would the Atlanta Falcons get into a scenario where you give up the players that you've developed and are really good players, your best cover corner, when you don't even have at this point a second cover corner? More on that in a second here. Your best interior defensive, just your best defensive lineman when you're the worst defensive line of scrimmage team in the NFL. So you're the worst line of scrimmage defensive team in the NFL, and you give up the one guy who can play on that. Oh, and then you give up $250 million to sign your quarter. This is madness. Now, this would come, okay? And let me be clear. This would not be, if something like that happens in all of this, that's not a Terry Fontenot. That's not an Arthur Smith decision. That comes right from Arthur Blank. When I tell you that Arthur Blank was the driving force to get Deshaun Watson, that's 100% true. That wasn't Terry Fontenot. That wasn't Arthur Smith that were pining to spend money and go out and, give up asset and all those. That came right from Arthur Blank. And a trade like this that involves Lamar Jackson of any level or of any merit or whatever, whether it's draft picks, players, and whatever cash is involved in signing him, because there's no way you're getting Lamar Jackson and not having him sign a long-term contract. And that's going to cost you $200 million guaranteed or whatever like that. So besides the fact of all of that, why would the Falcons gut their roster like that? Like, how are you better as a franchise? This makes no sense. You just got out of cap purgatory. You have a couple of pieces, a few pieces that you can build around. And the few pieces that you have, you give those away. You give away the number 8 pick in this year's draft, which whatever, no matter who you pick, should come in and contribute right away for this team, right? You want an edge player, offensive lineman, all of those different things, right? This is ridiculous. I mean, but, when we concoct these scenarios and different things like that, that's where we're at with all of this. That's where we get into these kinds of just crazy types of discussions and things like that. Lamar Jackson isn't worth that kind of trade package. Hell, I would tell you Tom Brady or Aaron Rodgers aren't worth that kind of trade package. Those guys aren't that. You gut your team to add a dynamic quarterback that you can watch run around that won't stay healthy. And if you trade Terrell and Grady and all those guys away, doesn't improve your roster. Like there's not a net benefit to adding Lamar, but losing Grady, losing AJ Terrell, losing the 8th pick, and multiple, other picks or whatever it is. I don't care if it's second, third, whatever like that. It's a crazy scenario. So in no universe would I ever do a deal like that. But if something like that happens, that's an Arthur Blank call. That's a call that comes directly from the top with Arthur Blank. All right, I want to talk about my friends over at Built Bar. Listen, Built.com is the place to go to get all of your low calorie, low sugar, low carb, high protein types of snacks, right? So we're in the new year, right? We're trying to get healthier. We're trying to get, in the mindset. We're back in the gym. We're eating better. Hope springs eternal and everything like that, right? Well, if you're looking for that delicious snack that is high protein, but gives you all the benefits of low sugar, low carb, low calorie, head to Built.com today. You can try out all of the great flavors that they have: churro, peanut butter brownie, coconut almond, okay? And now, even better, you can head to Sam's Club or Walmart and grab your boxes of Built bars. So if you want to go to Built.com and check out their wide menu of different products and you prefer to, do the online shopping thing, great. And by the way, I will tell you to try the marshmallow puffs. They have a different texture, different taste to them, but they still have 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, and the whopping 17 grams of protein in it. But you can now, if you want to, you do the brick and mortar type thing, and I'm a brick and mortar guy, you can head to Walmart, you can head to Sam's Club and pick up your Built bars there. So head to Built.com, go to Walmart, go to Sam's Club, check out the wide selection of different products that they have available for you, and get your low calorie, low sugar, low carb, but high protein types of snacks as we're all trying to get healthy. Head to Built.com today. Check out the wide menu of products that they have. So here's a trade scenario, and I won't even say a scenario, but here's a guy that I would be certainly in the marketplace for. Now, we know that Casey Hayward is going to be, that he's expected to be back and he could potentially, coming back from injury and things like that. I think he's a good second cornerback. But if you wanted to have a way to upgrade, and maybe at 34 years old, if you make Casey Hayward a guy who plays a lot more nickel, and I like what Isaiah Oliver has done over the last couple of years, but if I can upgrade my nickel corner, okay, I would be willing to do that. But here's a guy who is, reportedly on the move, okay? According to an article, it's a matter of when, not if, Jalen Ramsey is going to be traded. And they don't believe that the Rams will get anywhere near the compensation that their fans might expect. So if I have a chance to get Jalen Ramsey, I'm trading for Jalen Ramsey. More than I'm trading for Lamar and all the money and assets and things like that. And Jalen Ramsey has a few years left on his deal. I believe that it's a matter of he's got 40 something million dollars left on his deal. Let me see. I was trying to see if I could find the number on there, but I believe that he's got 40 something million dollars left on his deal for the next, I think it's 2 years. And I think that 2024, he could potentially opt out of everything. Now, here's the numbers for Jalen Ramsey. He was down in his coverage grade over the last 3 years, where, last year he was coming off of a spectacular season, He was the number one cover corner in the NFL. A.J. Terrell was number 2. His coverage grade this year was 77.8. That's down from the 86.3 that he had last season, down from the 80.3 from 2020, but up from the 68.7 that he had in 2019. So while it's his lowest grade in 3 years, it's still a very good grade in coverage, 77.8. He is a overall grade of 86.4. That's up a little bit even over the last couple of years. But can I tell you that if the Rams, and look, there's no reason to think that the Rams aren't in some free fall mode. We don't know the long-term status of what Matt Stafford is, even though he signed the contract and things like that. There are questions about whether or not he will make it back and he will be healthy enough to play again next season. So if that's the case, and the Rams potentially end up in a rebuild scenario or anything like that, and certainly coming off the Super Bowl, they didn't make the playoffs last year. Can I tell you that would be a guy that I would be all in on? If I had to give up some draft capital, and more than anything, the Rams don't have draft capital, right? They've traded their draft picks away and all these different things, for it. So if I can get Jalen Ramsey and I can pair him up with A.J. Terrell, and if I can move Casey Hayward to the nickel spot, because he's getting a little bit older, he was banged up last year, didn't play bad, but didn't play great last year, okay? But he's 34 years old. If I could have Ramsey, Terrell, and Hayward as my 3 corners, brother, sign me up. And you would make your pass rush instantly better, no matter what names are on the back of the jersey. Ebiketie, Carter, Grady, Taquan Graham, the 8th pick, whatever it is. Because I think that, I really do think that you could not have to trade away your 8th pick in the draft. You could trade away some of your 2nd and 3rd and things like that, and you pick up his money. But the Falcons certainly are going to have the money to spend, okay? So when you're talking about guys that I'm in the marketplace for, we talked about Justin Houston last week at 34 years old. He had 9.5 sacks. You could get him for a cheap price. But if the Falcons have the money to take on a contract like Jalen Ramsey's, and yes, I think the deal averaged out to like $20 million a year. I'm fine with that. Because he's still a Pro Bowl caliber player. He's still one of the best cover corners in the entirety of the NFL. But if I could pair him up with A.J. Terrell and have Jalen Ramsey on the other side, and I could move Casey Hayward to a nickel position as he's getting a little bit older, brother, sign me up for all of that. Sign me up for all of that. So if we can make this trade happen, unlike the Lamar thing and all that other mishigas and things like that, I would definitely be in the marketplace for that. And it probably will only cost you draft picks because, let's face it, the Rams don't have any draft capital. Like they don't have any draft picks of merit. So sign me up if I have Ramsey, Terrell, and Casey Hayward. I'll take that defensive backfield all day long, pair them up with Jalen Hawkins and Richie Grant. And brother, I think we've got something there. Maybe the Falcons can find a way to make all of this happen. All right, thank you so much for making Hittin' Hard with Jon Chuckery your first listen every day. Make sure you make Locked On Sports Today your second listen. Biggest stories of the day, instant reactions, big game recaps, and the take of the day. We ask you to head to youtube.com, put Locked On Sports Atlanta into your search browser. When you get there, hit that subscribe button. We're trying to grow to 6,000 subscribers. Be a part of our growing community. Leave us a comment. We are free and available, and I can't stress this enough, to download on Odyssey, Spotify. When you get there, you can hit that subscribe button and check out our daily podcast. Make sure you don't miss anything. Roku and Amazon Fire. Yes, we are available there as well. Check us out on those platforms. And then, of course, give me a follow at JMCH316 on my personal Twitter page. Back with you tomorrow. This has been Hittin' Hard with Jon Chuckery, Locked On Sports Atlanta.